Real Country 1430 AM and 1073 FM WRDN. I'm Brian Winnikins, and joining us this morning, U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. We're going to talk about some of the things going on in Washington, D.C. And Senator, thanks for joining us. Well, first on the agriculture side, once again, you're going to be part of the Farmers First program. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Farmers First Act is bipartisan legislation that I've introduced that really recognizes that we have a mental health crisis in our rural communities, and it disproportionately impacts farmers and farm workers, where the suicide rate is almost 3.5 times the national average. But, you think about farming, and oftentimes there's really difficult circumstances, whether that's long hours, being isolated, heavy physical labor, and all the headwinds that farmers are facing in terms of just getting ahead. It's not surprising that there's a lot of stress, anxiety, depression, and sometimes mental health crises happening. So Farmers First tries to match the resources so that no one needs to go through these struggles alone. And it does so in a variety of ways, through grant programs to make sure that resources are available when a mental health crisis hits.
And those grant resource programs will that money is going to be really filtering down to local groups, right?
Exactly. This is the whole idea that too many people in our rural communities just don't have anywhere to turn when they need mental health help. And no one should have to face a mental health crisis on their own. This legislation provides resources so that more folks in rural communities can recognize the signs of someone who's struggling with their mental health and get them help. And these grants can fund everything from, again, increasing what we might say mental health literacy so that people can recognize telltale signs, but also funding things like toll-free crisis lines and farmer support groups and resources so that, again, no one has to go through these struggles alone.
Talking with Senator Tammy Baldwin this morning from Washington. Senator, another bill that you are one of the co-sponsors of is AM radio for every vehicle.
Yeah.
And this is something that kind of you and I have talked about this really since last October, November, but this is something that really is kind of developed quickly.
Absolutely. So as we've discussed, we are seeing more and more automobile manufacturers making cars without AM radio. And it's really important that we point out that the need for AM radio to be available, especially for our rural and farming communities. It's a way to stay safe and get emergency weather alerts. It's a way to get local news and information. It's a way to help do your job better. And automakers should simply not be allowed to rip away access to AM radio. So a number of my colleagues have joined together to introduce this bill to to require auto manufacturers to have free access to AM radio. Some of them are trying to create a paywall so that the only way you can actually access AM radio is by paying a fee. And in the meantime, before that mandate would be implemented, automakers would also have to make it very clear if they were selling a car that was not equipped with AM radio.
Talking with Senator Tammy Baldwin. Senator, part of that bill doesn't include any type of receiver standards. And the FCC has said for years, when I've talked with them, the only way that we can do it is Congress has to tell us to do it. There's a little bit of debate about the 1961 TV / must carry type and certain standards there, but this has been going on since 2013 when I've been seeing the FCC, that it's up to Congress to do this. There's nothing in this bill that has any type of receiver standards. And there's a lot in the broadcast industry. And frankly, a lot of consumers are saying, well, then the car companies are just going to go to the lowest common denominator. They're going to put incredibly bad receivers in, not only for AM, but also for FM to get exactly what you just said. Well, use our subscription service. It'll be better. Has anyone talked about that in Congress about maybe adding this on?
Well, it's a really noteworthy point to raise. Obviously, part of the story that's being told right now is that certain auto manufacturers, especially when they have been switching to electric vehicles, have been saying that the AM technology isn't going to work. Well, you have to make it work, and they certainly can. In terms of it being explicitly in the legislation, I think when we get to the point where we're voting on it in committee, that may be an important update that we need to make. I will say that most Congress people are not expert in the field of receiver standards. So I think we're going to need that technical assistance so that we get it right.
If you need an expert, I will tell you, you can talk with our engineer who works for Motorola and who has worked with the FCC for over 40 years, and he can tell you exactly what is going on and why. Now, speaking of the committee, on the House side, they're doing a committee on AM radio here coming up next week, Energy and Commerce. You're on Commerce, but obviously on the Senate side.
Right.
So is this something that the Senate Commerce Committee, because you also oversee FCC, are going to say, maybe we should have a hearing on this and bring in the FCC and talk about interference? Have you guys looked at the interference of EVs to other vehicles, receiver standards, that sort of thing? Has the Senate Commerce Committee thought about this?
Well, I have no question that this is being discussed. The lead author of this bill, Senator Markey, is also with me on the Commerce Committee, and has certainly an influential role to play in terms of moving this legislation, highlighting it through either a hearing or other opportunities to make sure that people are aware, because this is one of those things that if we don't act with some some haste, I would say, it may be, it almost becomes too late, and we don't want that to happen.
It's going to be fun to watch. But again, if you need any help, just feel free to reach out, because I can get you to the experts, or at least, talk about what it's like here in Durand. Senator Baldwin, again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That is U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. You're listening to WRDN.